we don't talk, many things we don't love. You think they be like highway?
Is home to winning sports teams and elite universities. But some might say that there are two Bostons.
If you look at City Hall, no one's talking about that specific racial and historical component that Black people are the ones that are being removed.
There's a huge significant difference in lived experiences, and we know this because of the wealth report. We're at $8.
This whole plan of gentrification isn't a new concept. In every city you go into in the Northeast, they kept moving Black people out of the inner city. So it's a plan. It's been in place for a long time.
While the displacement isn't as bad as 1963, it hasn't gotten much better now.
It's by design that they've created spaces where we are no longer seen anymore. They're wiping us out one community at a time, and they're getting away with it. This is gentrification. Franklin Park has been a place where we have built community, and all these things are at risk.
Why is the mayor willing to throw herself on this sword, do or die, for this project? It's not about soccer. It's about the additional profits that can be made in this entertainment complex.
It's a disrespect that you would take public parkland and then give it to a private group to control it.
And this project is Emmett Till's mama pulling back a curtain. And if people don't look at what's behind that curtain, it's coming to them.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Jabari Media. And you just saw a great documentary by Sabby Sabs. Sabby Sabs, sorry. I said Save, sorry. Sabby Sabs. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm a little nervous, clearly. How are you doing?
Oh, no worries. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, this documentary is a part of a conversation that I have been talking about here in the New Haven and Bridgeport areas of Connecticut so much because it's just something that we have been fighting against as a Black community all over, and you don't see this topic anywhere talked about really in the mainstream as much. They'll make jokes about it in Hollywood where you'll see an episode of Skins where they show a Starbucks and the community's like, oh, what's that Starbucks is doing there? Oh, what's happening. They're about to remove us out of the neighborhood. But that's an aspect that they show from a white poor community. I don't think there has really been anything dynamic on showing what's happening with Black people in our country at all as strongly as this trailer is showing.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that a lot of times this isn't a topic that is discussed as much as it should be. And gentrification is something that I've been very, very passionate about. I know people who have been displaced because of it. And I have had friends who have had to move because the building that they lived in was sold to an investor or developer, and they had like 30 days to find a place to live. And I think what some people in particular, they may not understand is that when it comes to Boston, right? Like a lot of times when we hear about gentrification, it's DC or New York is a big one. Los Angeles, a lot of people know about San Francisco. San Francisco is probably one of the best case studies that you can look towards when it comes to displacement of Black people. And I think that Boston, for whatever reason, has kind of flown under the radar. There are people who, even till this day, they ask, like, do Black people actually live in Boston? I think a lot of people think of Boston as an Irish American city. And at
we
one
have joked
point
about that here. Yeah.
At one point, like that was the case. But even then, there's always been like Black neighborhoods in Boston, but you don't hear it talked about. Hollywood doesn't even talk about it. A lot of the movies that you see that are based in Boston or about Boston are from the perspective of an Irish American family or Irish American individual in Boston, like The Departed, right? Or
Right.
Mystic River is another one. Like they're usually those types of movies, but you don't see people making these movies about Black communities in Boston. So I think a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah. Yes. And I definitely agree with that. Because that it is definitely those areas where we don't think of, especially like with Vermont and Maine as well too. Just that upper. I mean, probably people don't even think there's Black people as much in Connecticut. I wouldn't be surprised, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a stigma with Bridgeport, well, not Bridgeport, with Boston. And I'm a Boston Celtics fan, and I'll tell you, I get hit with the jokes by my friends all the time. Oh, you like them? They don't like us all the time. Like, why would you even? And I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
bad.
Yeah, it usually stops at New York. It's like
Right.
once you hit New York, like that's it. And people just feel like the rest of the states in the Northeast above New York uh, don't have Black people there. But that's actually
Yeah.
not the case. And I just think that this story in particular needs to be told. More people need to know about what happened to Black communities in Boston and what is still happening today. So, for this
Mhm.
particular documentary, we focus on 4 areas. I like to call them 4 pieces of a puzzle: gentrification, redlining, urban renewal, and mass incarceration. And it is those 4 pieces of that puzzle that, from the information and the research that I've gathered, led to the erasure of Black Boston. And so those are things that we break down throughout the documentary. And I think that once people see it, then they'll be able to answer that question. A lot of my friends, that the first time they came to visit me here in Boston, they said, where are all the Black people, right? Because if you go to New York, if you go downtown in New York, you still see Black people. If you
Right.
go to downtown in DC, Baltimore, Philly, etc., you still see Black people, but not
Right.
as much when you come to Boston. And it leads people to assume that there's no Black population here, but that's not the case. They are kind of hidden, but they're hidden in plain sight.
Now, when we talk about redlining and we talk about the Jim Crow, which is basically like another part of redlining, would you say, because Boston has always had this racial history as well too, very strongly. So you were basically saying that they have found a way where the Black representation within Boston is just almost erased, to the point where the Black people are put in outskirts, and so you don't really see Black people working in city. You see them working out of cities majority of the time. That's I'm thinking about how when I last visited Boston, and I've noticed that as well too when you spoke about how where are the Black people at? That is actually really true.
Yeah, it's true. It's the Black neighborhoods in Boston, in particular, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, no longer Jamaica Plain. Jamaica Plain has been
Mhm.
heavily gentrified. They are in the southern part of the city, and these are the areas that, especially if you're a tourist, you're less likely to go to those areas. If
Right.
you get on a duck tour or one of the trolleys to tour the city, they're not taking you to that part of the city. For the most part, they remain in Boston proper, and even Cambridge. They go to parts of Cambridge to show you Harvard Square and MIT, but they don't venture into the part of Boston that is the largest part. Roxbury, Dorchester in particular, is the largest neighborhood in Boston, but they don't take you there. And so if you come here as a tourist, your perception of Boston is what you see in Boston proper. And there's so much more to the city that I think, regardless of whatever mayor we've had in the past, they have not done a really good job of promoting that and as recognizing and establishing that
Mhm.
Black people help build Boston too. And it's really weird. I've lived in different cities and I've never seen anything like what I've seen in Boston. It's there was a guy, he was on a local morning show here, and he said that when he was a college student in Boston, he said he had never been to a city that effectively hides its Black population so well. And it's true. And so I think that's what people need to hear. And unfortunately, if you're in the downtown area where a lot of the finance companies are, you're less likely to see Black people there. A lot of the finance companies are not hiring Black people, even those that are qualified. So it's just, you don't really see us as much in Boston proper. And that there's a whole story behind that, which we do get into.
And I was shocked by the fact that it said the income for Black people in Boston is average. It was $8 I saw on
The net worth.
the net worth. There we go.
Yeah, our wealth. Yeah, it's true. I think when that report was first released, and this is the research that was done by Dr. Sandy Darity, there was a stigma on the city, and people were somewhat embarrassed. I think one of the things I noticed, a lot of white liberals here seem to feel a little bit embarrassed, but it's the truth. And I'm sure if you look at other cities, you'd probably find something a little bit similar. And that's because people have been displaced. The people have to understand that some of these highways that you drive on that go through neighborhoods, there were homes that were torn down so that those highways could be built. And when those homes were torn down in Black neighborhoods, the people there were not compensated for the wealth that they lost. And so we do interview people throughout the documentary where some of their families actually owned those homes. They were demolished by the city of Boston and they were put in an apartment. That in itself is stealing generational wealth. So not being fairly compensated, giving people vouchers and telling them to move to a different town that doesn't have the resources or the infrastructure for them to thrive. This has been going on for a long time. And since I've been here since 2011, I've only seen it continue to get worse, not better.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, again, just looking at the correlations, is Harvard a big influence between institutions and corporations and government, like basically a trifecta that is causing this displacement? Because Harvard's the oldest school in the country, right? So
Yeah. One of the things that you learn as well is about the racism from Harvard University, which has a deep history when it comes to slavery. I think a lot of people are not aware about this. Harvard University has ties to slavery, which they have acknowledged, but they haven't implemented any type of repair for that. So Harvard's a part of it. Boston University is a part of it. MIT is a part of it. So those universities, the elite universities within Boston and Boston proper, they are very much complicit. But it's not just the universities. It's some of the churches, like the Trinity Church in Copley Square, also profited from the slave trade. I mean, it's so many businesses, and I consider the universities to be a business because they're just about making money. So many businesses that have made a lot of money and off of the expense of Black people losing generational wealth. The idea that I have seen over the years, whether it's the current mayor, Mayor Michelle Wu, the previous mayor, Mayor Marty Walsh, and the mayor before him, Mayor Menino, is that they've made it very clear that they want Boston to be a place that wealthy people want to come to live. They want it to be a place where the college graduates are going to stay and thrive. And that's who they're building things for. All of these new projects that have been developing in Seaport area, which used to be completely desolate, they've built that up a lot. All of these things that are built are not built for people who are working class, in particular, Black people who grew up in Boston. It's not built for them. It's built for people who are going to graduate from these universities, who have the money to spend for those companies and those businesses to thrive. And I would also send an alarm about this as well. This is not just happening in Boston. This is happening all across the country. A lot of times, the cities that are pointed out about this, it is Boston, DC, New York, San Francisco, Oakland. You can add them to the list as well, Los Angeles, etc. But I want to point your attention to down south. This is also happening in Atlanta. And I've heard a number of stories from people, I've had them on my show, that live in Atlanta, that are talking about how they're replacing people there, how they're getting rid of Black neighborhoods there and bringing in, juice bars or a brewery, or these types of businesses that attract a certain demographic, bringing in those businesses in Atlanta as well. I would also caution people to pay close attention to New Orleans, Louisiana. Since Hurricane Katrina, a lot of the people that were displaced after that hurricane have not been able to afford to move back to Louisiana, New Orleans in particular, because big business came in and said, we're going to buy up this land and this is going to be profitable for us. So the plan that you see happening is to push Black people out of the cities and into these desolate suburban areas that just don't have a lot of the resources, but a lot of the jobs are still in the city. So you now have a longer commute and you're paying more to commute to work. We are seeing basically a reverse white flight, where the cities are trying to get white people to move back into the cities. And you're seeing that with some of the baby boomers selling their homes and moving back into the city, in Boston in particular, and buying a condo in the Seaport district, which is a very, very expensive district in Boston. You're seeing that reverse, where they're trying to lure white populations back into the city and push Black people out into these suburban areas where, like I said, there's not as many jobs that are there. And everyone needs to pay attention to what is happening, to what is going on.
And that, no one ever clarified it with me. That clarified I feel like I got it more when you said reverse white flight, because back in my mind, I'm like, where do they think we're going to go? We can't afford the suburb. We can't afford like where do they think we're going to go? And France has this same kind of concept where a lot of people, immigrants, people in poverty, stuff like that, live in the suburban type of style, and majority of white people live in the cities themselves. So it definitely makes sense to see American realtors and everybody, the powers that be, wanting to bring that back, because that's when it was so much of an affluent era for them. When I guess it was so much of an affluent era for them, and they don't like the fact that they had to flee to the suburbs, and because we were all coming in. But my thing is that, like, if they would just opened up more job opportunities, and this is why we talk about reparations and all this stuff, and the whole high crime rate and all that thing. It's all going together when you see a person like Donald Trump. They are pushing that narrative of the platform for a reverse white flight. I hope I articulated that perfectly to get a full understanding.
No, it's 100% true. This is all connected, right? So when you hear Donald Trump talk about, we want to decrease crime in these cities, he doesn't want to decrease that crime for Black people to be able to stay there. They want to decrease that crime to make these cities more attractive to professional white people to come back into the cities and to stay in the cities. And I warned people about this a while back when another thing that I saw was that Boston in particular, they were removing parking spots, right? So they were removing all of a lot of street parking that was there when I first moved here. Cambridge, I think, was the first that really started pushing this, and they started to implement bike lanes. Well, if you've ever been here, which you have, a lot of the roads here can be very narrow. Yes. And so they have a bike lane and they have a bus lane. So their public transit has its own lane in some of these places. And it's very clear what they're trying to do. They're trying to limit cars, increase the need for bikes and public transportation. Now, I'm all for public transportation. The problem, though, here in Boston is that our public transportation system is not 24 hours. It's not like New York City. It does stop around midnight-ish. It's supposed to go to 1, but try that if you want to. But they're trying to push more people to take public transit, which I would have no problem with if it was reliable. In Boston, public transportation is not reliable. And I lived in New York, so I can tell you the difference. If you're working third shift, you're not going to be able to take public transportation to get back home. So then you still have to rely on either having a car or taking an Uber to get back home from work. A lot of the people that work in the hospitals, they'll tell you this. The people that work at the bars and close the bars late at night when there's no public transportation available, guess how they have to get home? So They really want to make it so that we have less and less. This is the point I'm trying to really drive home. They really want us to own less, and they want us to be happy with having as little as possible. And that includes stuffing people into shoebox style apartments, removing parking spaces so that you don't have a vehicle, and just having people kind of live in these spaces, which are developing all over the country in the big cities, where everything is kind of close to you, whether it's a grocery store, which will typically be overpriced, or a CVS, a pharmacy, et cetera. Everything you need is just right there. And you can just walk to all these places or bike to all of these places. And then the suburban areas, who knows? Like I said, a lot of the jobs are just not out that way. So it's clear what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish.
And like, it's crazy, Sabrina, while you're saying this, like, I'm literally like, oh my God, less parking. Cause I live like 2 blocks away from downtown, in New Haven. I live like right outside of Yale. My job is right across the street. My pharmacist is right across the street. I live in a shoebox apartment with my partner. Our apartment is very small. And it's all just like, Jesus Christ. And they just installed bike lanes right behind me. In one of the most narrowest streets in New Haven, which is crazy. And they got these Tesla car chargers now outside on the parking lot. And I'm like, no one here has Tesla cars at all. Like, it's just, the more you just say things, I'm just like, oh my God, dude. The only difference is that I'm gonna be leaving it here in a year. So some white face will take this part and they'll probably pay twice as much rent as what I'm paying right now.
Yeah.
And they'll be a professional because they want it for the professional. This is what the term they always use, right? We want this space for professionals all the time. Like,
and I totally understand trying to help the environment. I get that. But these things that they're implementing, the effect that it has on the environment is low when you compare it to the wars. If you really want to try to, we can't reverse it, but if you really want to try to implement some type of climate change, I don't know, lessen climate change, in that respect, you have to stop the wars. You have to stop dropping bombs. You have to stop doing that. That's the really big impact. You have to stop that. So if you're not willing to stop that, all of these things that they're doing, it's small compared to the damage that is done to the environment from war. And so it scares me when I see people falling into that narrative and just believing all I got to do is recycle, use a paper straw, not drive a car, drive a bike instead, live in a smaller space, don't eat meat, and that'll change everything. No, because the bombs keep dropping. And that does tremendous harm to the environment. So I think that's a big part of the picture. But people just continue to become displaced. And in particular, when a lot of the gentrification happens, it's happening to Black communities, lower income Black neighborhoods, especially if you live in a city that is along the coast, right? So Boston, we are on the water. They consider that the developers and investors, they are considering this prime real estate. So it doesn't matter to them that it's a low income neighborhood or a poor neighborhood. They can kick everybody out, tear down the property that's there, and build something that's new. That's why you see the big change also that happened in Brooklyn, right? In the neighborhood of Williamsburg in Brooklyn. When I lived in Brooklyn, that neighborhood was not gentrified. Now you go to Williamsburg today and you see all these tall luxury apartment buildings. I'm like, what happened to this place? And it destroys the character of the neighborhood as well. So now people who grew up in that neighborhood can't afford to live there. You go to Brooklyn and you go to Williamsburg, I don't even hear a New York City accent anymore. That's another thing. So pay attention to these things. And so I think that the biggest change I noticed was the accent. When I moved to Boston, I still heard the Boston accent a little bit. Now I hear it less and less and less. Now, if you come here as a tourist, you're not going to notice that, because if you get on a duck tour one of those little duck boat tours or whatever, 9 times out of 10, the person who is the tour guide is someone who does have a Boston accent, but they probably don't live in Boston anymore. They probably moved to the North Shore or the
Right.
South Shore. So it's misleading. It gives you this impression that, oh, look at this city with all this character and listen to the Boston accent, etc. But once you start living here, you start to see, especially in Boston proper, that accent becomes far and few. And you hear it more if you come to the North Shore or you go to the South Shore or even parts of Western Mass. That's where you really need to go to hear it. So they're kicking people out. And the current project we're discussing, and one of the projects we discuss in this documentary, is the takeover of White Stadium inside of Franklin Park. And Franklin Park is the largest green space that we have here in Boston, along the Emerald Necklace. So, in the cities, because it's so dense, any green space that you have is considered a blessing because you're just happy to have something, some type of park or something that you can utilize or use. They're taking that. They've already started the construction, and that stadium in particular, of White Stadium, this is something that is used by Boston Public Schools. So Boston Public School football games are hosted at White Stadium. A lot of different events in the community, which is a Black community. And the mayor just came in with developers and they just took it. They stole a stadium for the purpose of repurposing it to make it more appealing for this hope of a women's soccer league in Boston. And first and foremost, I say this: if any city doesn't need another sports team, it's us. We don't. We have 4 professional sports teams like in Boston, but they just want to make money. They want to make money. And now you see what is already happening, which I predicted. These developers are already starting to buy property around the stadium, around Franklin Park. And that means that the rent is going to increase for people who live in that neighborhood. We've seen it time and time again.
Yep. No, it's absolutely just when you talk about Brooklyn, I have family in Brooklyn. I remember Brooklyn when it was actually Brooklyn, and going back to play gigs and stuff, I noticed the change. And my family, they don't even live inside Brooklyn anymore. They had to go out on the outskirts of where Brooklyn is at, where they're at right now. But they used to live like right inside. It used to be so fun. We'll go down to the bodega because they're Puerto Rican. So I learned so much about Latin history just hanging out with them and stuff like that. And it was really, really cool. And now it's just like, oh, we can't go that deep into Brooklyn to work and we can't afford it. So that's heartbreaking with the Franklin, what they're calling it White Stadium now.
White Stadium inside of Franklin Park. Yeah, it's huge, by the way.
Jesus. It's like, how much money do you need at this point? And it's not even doing anything for the people. It's just all just greed. It's just so much fucking greed. Excuse my French. It's so much greed. Yeah. And it's like, do you not see how much greed that you want? It's not clear to you at all how much greed you want. This is the issue with Yale as well, too, down the block, about how much greed they want. And they would even displace poor white people just to make sure that their greed is quenched. So it's not even like they're safe. And I do wonder, because if you know anything about this, because this is just something that so a lot of the taxes for inner city people in the working class actually helps out in suburban neighborhoods. I'm thinking in the future that might switch if this type of gentrification becomes to the way it is, and now you're starting to see the suburban neighborhoods start becoming the underprivileged. Like that's just a theory in my mind that they might switch the taxes and they'll just start staying in house. Oh my God, that's wow. Okay,
that's right. That's right. Everyone pay attention, because all of these mayors and governors, they have a vision, right? Like Gavin Newsom is already talking about making Los Angeles a smart city. I mean, pay attention to all of these things. Like, in order for them to build a lot of these facilities that they want, they have to move people out, especially if you're in a dense area. And it's crazy what Boston has become. It was once like this city of working class people. That's originally what Boston was. But now
Right.
it's become a city for the professional managerial class. And even for me, even I have friends who have professional jobs where it's just too much for them now, where even they're starting to say, okay, I need to move outside of the city, right? Like I moved
Too much
outside of the
pressure.
city.
Yeah.
It's too much and it's spreading. So it's not just Boston, it's Cambridge, it's Somerville, which is used to be called Slummerville.
Mhm.
They're going into those areas, Malden, Medford, like all of those areas that surround Boston as well. And just kind of just developers are just taking over. And another thing that was really disturbing to me is the number of Black businesses that have been just lost in the Black neighborhoods, just gone. And you walk around Roxbury today and you're like, wow, this place is so different now compared to how it used to be. All these businesses in the neighborhood that have absolutely nothing to do with the population that lives there. And so, what I want people to know is that a lot of the residents, particularly in Roxbury and Dorchester, they are very proud of where they come from. You know, a lot of them don't want to leave, don't want to move, but they're being pushed out. And they should have the option, they should have the opportunity to be able to stay put in their own neighborhoods and continue to build community and not, get these vouchers and have the city send them to all these different places like Ipswich and Brockton and Taunton. And I've just watched so many people be displaced, regardless who was mayor.
Yeah, that man, Sabrina, and like this is the type of stuff that like should be talked about on a daily basis. But I feel like Donald Trump and the administration and what's going on in Gaza and what's going on in Gaza is so important. But the Donald Trump thing is just takes away the vapor. It just takes away the working class struggle that we have to deal with, that we have to remember, that we have to be proud of, because there's just so much buffoonery going on and stuff like that. And I see the turn of the country a lot more scarier now. We're going into the last part with Charlie Kirk being assassinated, which is something that I'd never want on anyone. But me being a leftist, I didn't really care as much as the other people did. But this whole vilifying and then trying to, they want a war, like this whole race war is something that they keep talking about. And I saw even Tucker Carlson talking about how white people are being genocide in the UK and all this nonsense. And yesterday was the funeral of Charlie Kirk. And it seemed like it wasn't a funeral to me. When I looked at the clips, it looked like it was a Nazi rally, in my opinion. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. If you saw any video of that, I don't even want to show it because it's just so annoying.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, like I would say the most sincere response I saw was from his wife, where she talked about, who he was to her. But the response from Donald Trump to bring politics into it, to bring up Joe Biden, the response from Stephen Miller. Yeah, we're coming. You woke up the dragon.
Yeah,
like what?
Does that mean?
It's supposed to be a memorial service, right? Like, so it's like, to me, it's like, why even bring politics into it? Why not just focus on who you felt he was as a person, right? Tucker Carlson is getting smeared because he made a statement, I guess, that kind of alluded to Charlie being ordered to be taken out. And apparently that offended Israelis. So now they're coming after him and they're calling him anti-Semitic. Like, I'm going to say this. From what I saw from especially the crowd size that was there, the Democratic Party is in trouble. Big trouble. A lot of, I did not expect to see, it was a lot of people there. And the message apparently has been clear that the right, I will say this, they are very organized. And the Democratic Party, to me, has capitulated to some of the nonsense from the Republican Party, has capitulated to some of Donald Trump's ridiculousness. They're not actually trying to fight against anything. And that's because the Democratic Party is also a right-wing party, just not as right-wing as the Republican Party, right? So I think that the assassination of Charlie Kirk is actually going to make the Republican Party stronger.
Yeah. And it's getting to the point where they have control of the media at this point. You know, I didn't really care too much about Jimmy Kimmel, but anytime someone that says something so little as what he said, freedom of speech, we have to keep fighting for that 24/7. Even when it happened to Alex Jones, I was like, that's a little sus, but I know the liberals are happy. But, you know, I'm not going to be happy about that because that just shows I'm going to school for journalism. And I'm just like, that could be me one day with my little left voice.
Yeah, like it can happen to, it happens to both sides, right? So people who were cheering on the firing of Jimmy Kimmel, who, by the way, I don't even think is that funny, but people who were cheering on the firing of him, I just had to remind people it can come right back the other way. And it has, right? Like we've seen that. You mentioned Alex Jones, a couple of others as well. It can easily swing back the other way. Don't forget, Tucker Carlson was fired from Fox News. Remember that? Remember how the Daily Wire fired Candace Owens? Like all these things because they didn't agree, like with their rhetoric, etc. It definitely can come back the other way. And for me, like I'm really looking towards the people who are speaking out in support of free speech. I'm looking towards the people, like whether they're on the right or the left, right? Because if we don't have free speech, we don't have anything. And people really have to understand that. If they can shut down Jimmy Kimmel, and I said this a couple years ago about Julian Assange, I said, if they can do that to a white Australian man, what do you think they are going to do to you? But they will not do to you, right? So that should be a wake-up call to a lot of people. And hopefully it is waking some people up. But, you know, they got to keep us divided with right versus left. And I think it's kind of interesting that as people were starting to come together on both sides against Israel and what Israel was doing, and of course, calling for the release of the Epstein files, I find it interesting that after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, all of a sudden they bring the attention back to left versus right.
Yep. And all these people on the media that were all about, I wanted the Epstein list to be released and all this stuff. They especially on the right side, they just went right into it. They just got the Kool-Aid. Piers Morgan's doing every other interview talking about Charlie Kirk, talking about the left being this barbaric and all this stuff like that. And it's just it scares the bejeebuses out of me. But I know at the end of the day, Sabrina, that what happens to me is not compared to what my ancestors and your ancestors have been through. And we could get through this, and we got to just keep getting stronger and stronger while they're getting stronger and stronger. We got to try to keep organizing and talking about. That's why this documentary is so important, so people can learn about what's going on in Boston and be educated about what's going on in Boston. Because just like I didn't know as much about what was happening in Gaza, I could learn just as much about what's happening in Boston as well too with our Black community. It's a time for so many different conversations that need to start happening, and people got to avoid that mainstream media when they're just always yelling about one topic 24/7. But it's so hard because I used to think nobody watches mainstream media, but it's in the airplanes. It's in the I can't even think. I can't even talk right now. It's all over. It's in the train stations. It's in the airports. It's all over. So people look up on the screen, they see it, and then they're like, oh, they're talking about that again, and it stays in the back of their mind, and they continue to believe that propaganda. It's all over still. So we still
it's
have
at
to
the
find
gym.
ways to count it. Right. It's at the gym. They control it. And when you see a correlation between it's fascist when you see a correlation between corporation and government. And this is exactly what we're seeing. This is definitely a fascist type of movement. As much as people don't want to say it is, most people don't want to acknowledge it is. When you got ICE do whatever the hell they want to do right now, you're there, baby. It's right there. They did the same thing in Germany.
And the bad part about it is, like I said, the Democrats aren't really fighting back against Donald Trump.
Right.
So
they're cowards. Yeah.
People are letting him do what he
us.
wants. They're letting him do what he wants to do. I mean, I never would have thought in a million years I would even see some of the right-wing influencers criticize Donald Trump and his administration.
Right.
So this is all like a new thing. You know, there seems to be some type of split there on the right as well. Like those who are like, no, free speech, matters. And no, we don't need to give our money to Israel. And yes, there is a genocide happening in Gaza. Release the Epstein files. And those who are just willing to go along with whatever Donald Trump says. And I think that, like, I didn't see this during his first term in 2016, but we are seeing something different now. And I think a lot of people are starting to wake up, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for coming on. When do you think you'll be, are you close to your goal? First of all, with the fundraiser, I have the link in the description for everybody so they can donate. And when do you think you'll be able to release your documentary?
Yes, we are planning for the week of November 13th for On the Ground. That will be we're trying to do a On the Ground premiere with the Franklin Park Defenders. And then also, of course, the premiere on YouTube. So I'm getting very close to that goal. We're almost there, but yeah, it's home stretch. It's basically now just fine tuning and implementing like lower thirds for like titles, names, that type of stuff. And of course, animation. Awesome.
And you're still with the Black Network, the Blackout Network?
Yes. Yeah.
Shout out to the Blackout Network. Those my people. All right. Well, let me let you go because I know you got so much to do. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Please go on IG and follow POW Crisis Relief if you want to help displaced families in Gaza. Their goal is 100,000 again, and they are reaching to their goal. So please go to IG POW Crisis Relief and donate to help displaced families in Gaza. For everybody out there in the airwaves, have a really good day. And you too, Sabrina, have a really nice day.
Thank you so much, Jabari.
Blank period, yeah. On my black, brown, and indigenous. Gotta holler if you really feeling this. Gotta holler if you really real enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?